What if I told you the greatest breakthroughs began with brilliant failures? Failure hurts. It's that hollow feeling deep inside when something you poured your heart into crumbles right before your eyes. It's the cold sweat, the sinking realization that you fell short. It's the silent shame that whispers, "You're just not good enough." You felt it. Maybe when you were rejected from the job you desperately wanted, or when your dream project failed publicly, leaving you embarrassed and broken. It stings because it matters, because you dared to risk something real. The truth is, the deeper the pain, the braver you were for stepping onto the stage at all. Here's something surprising. The human brain registers emotional pain, like rejection or failure, the same way it registers physical pain. In other words, your fear of failure isn't weakness, it's biology, it's human nature. And yet this very pain is the gateway to extraordinary achievement. Think about Thomas Edison. Everyone knows his famous quote, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." But imagine the emotional toll behind those words. Thousands of disappointments, countless sleepless nights, endless ridicule from those who didn't understand. Each failure, each painful attempt was sharpening him, preparing him for greatness. So ask yourself honestly, could you handle failing 10,000 times? Could you keep going, keep fighting, even when everything inside you screamed to stop? The pain of failure is real, but it's never the end of the story. Instead, it's evidence that you're pushing beyond comfort, reaching towards something extraordinary. The greatest danger isn't experiencing failure, it's hiding from it. Because failure isn't a barrier to success, it's the hidden bridge leading directly to it. Now, what if every setback you faced held a secret gift? What if your worst defeats were quietly shaping your greatest victories? Before you dismiss this as mere optimism, let me tell you a truth that might shock you, one that could change your perspective on failure forever. There's a dangerous myth we've all been sold, that success is clean, linear, and perfect, that extraordinary people rarely fail. It's not just wrong, it's destructive. This myth has convinced us that failing means we're broken, inadequate, or flawed. Nothing could be further from the truth. Take James Dyson, the billionaire inventor whose vacuum cleaners changed the world. He didn't just experience a handful of failures, he suffered through 5,126 unsuccessful prototypes. Imagine that for a second, over 5,000 moments when everything he worked for fell apart. People laughed at him, his savings drained away, his confidence bruised and battered. Yet, he persisted. Dyson knew that perfection was a fantasy, but improvement was inevitable. Each failure was brilliant, carefully guiding him closer to his goal. Each setback taught him precisely what wouldn't work, inching him ever closer to what eventually did. Then there's Katalin Karikó, whose groundbreaking research on mRNA vaccines faced rejection after rejection. For decades, universities turned her away, funding disappeared, and colleagues dismissed her as unrealistic, even foolish. She admitted to feeling crushed, worthless, and unsure of herself. Yet deep inside, Karikó understood something crucial. Failure was not her enemy, it was her mentor. It forced her to refine her theories, sharpen her approach, and perfect her methods. Those brilliant failures became the cornerstone for vaccines that saved millions of lives. If Karikó had believed the myth of perfection, she would have abandoned her vision long before she changed the world. And consider Jan Koum, who applied for his dream job at Facebook and was rejected outright. Feeling the sharp sting of humiliation, he didn't retreat or hide. Instead, he boldly decided to build something better. That rejection became the starting line for WhatsApp, a company Facebook later bought for $19 billion. If Koum had gotten that original job, WhatsApp would never have existed. His brilliant failure was actually the critical turning point toward monumental success. Here's the powerful truth hidden within these stories. Perfection never creates anything extraordinary. It's messy, brilliant failure that fuels innovation, creativity, and breakthrough. We must tear down this damaging myth that tells us failure means something's wrong with us. Failure simply means we're courageous enough to try. So now I ask you, are you willing to abandon perfection? Are you ready to embrace setbacks not as proof of inadequacy, but as evidence of your bravery, as stepping stones toward your greatest potential? The real secret of extraordinary achievement lies not in avoiding failure, but in learning to fail brilliantly. And in that brilliance, you'll discover the hidden power that transforms everything. Imagine a sculptor standing before a massive, untouched block of marble. At first glance, every strike of the chisel appears destructive. Fragments fall away and the stone breaks apart, seemingly beyond repair. But beneath those chaotic blows lies something magnificent. The gradual revelation of a masterpiece. Each strike, even the ones that feel like mistakes, removes everything unnecessary, leaving behind something remarkable and true. Michelangelo's statue of David was created from marble that had been rejected twice. Considered flawed, damaged, and worthless, it lay discarded for 25 years. Yet Michelangelo saw within that rejected stone something beautiful others missed. He understood that the stone's apparent imperfections weren't obstacles, they were opportunities. With each intentional strike, he brilliantly transformed failure into art that stands unmatched centuries later. This metaphor captures the hidden power in every failure you face, each setback, each rejection, each painful misstep. These are not random or meaningless, they are strategic strikes of life's chisel, carving away your doubts, fears, and weaknesses to reveal strength, clarity, and purpose you didn't know existed. Failure doesn't destroy potential, it reveals it. When Dyson crafted thousands of failed vacuum prototypes, each so-called mistake taught him precisely what wouldn't work. Without those repeated failures, he could never have understood the nuanced mechanics that eventually created a billion-dollar invention. Every failure brilliantly refined him, bringing him one step closer to revolutionizing household technology forever. Likewise, Dr. Katalin Kariko's relentless rejections forced her to rethink, refine, and strengthen her theories. Her decades-long struggle felt lonely and humiliating, but each rejection was sharpening her vision, building resilience, and preparing her breakthrough moment. When the world needed vaccines urgently during a devastating pandemic, it was Kariko's brilliantly failed journey that made her science ready. Her pain and struggle became the blueprint for saving millions of lives. Catherine Stockett, who wrote the best-selling novel The Help, endured more than 60 rejection letters over 3 exhausting years. Friends told her to move on. Publishers labeled her work unmarketable. The repeated sting of failure nearly broke her, but something remarkable happened within that struggle. Each rejection letter forced her to deepen her story, strengthen her writing, and amplify her determination. Her brilliant failure didn't weaken her. It built her resolve and ultimately catapulted her novel into a global phenomenon. Science confirms this hidden power. Psychologists call it the growth mindset. Those who see failure not as proof of inability but as a crucial opportunity for learning and improvement experience extraordinary results. Your brain literally rewires itself each time you face setbacks courageously, strengthening resilience, sharpening skills, and enhancing your creativity. In short, brilliant failure doesn't just teach, it transforms. Imagine failure as refining gold through fire. Gold in its purest form emerges only after intense heat burns away impurities. Likewise, every painful experience of failure burns away your limitations, ego, and complacency, leaving only strength and wisdom behind. Or think of a bamboo tree. After planting, it appears as if nothing happens for years. Invisible beneath the surface, the tree develops powerful roots. Suddenly, after 5 years of apparent failure, it bursts forth, growing rapidly, reaching heights previously unimaginable. Your failures quietly build your roots, preparing you for the extraordinary moment you finally break through. Yet, even understanding failure's hidden power, the fear of failing again can paralyze us. If failure truly is transformative, why does it scare us so deeply? Why, despite evidence, do we still run from the pain rather than embracing it? To truly harness the hidden power of failure, something within you must change dramatically, not just your actions, but your entire mindset. You must see setbacks not as devastating ends, but as brilliant beginnings. The key question is, how exactly do you shift your mindset from fear to fearless? How do you embrace failure as an essential part of your journey? How do you respond when life knocks you down? Do you hide in embarrassment, believing your failures prove your inadequacy? Or do you stand up defiantly, asking, what lesson is hidden within this setback? Carol Dweck, one of the most influential psychologists of our time, discovered that the difference between these two reactions comes down to mindset. Specifically, fixed versus growth. People trapped in a fixed mindset see failures as personal flaws, permanent labels defining their worth. But those who possess a growth mindset understand something powerful. Failure is temporary, informational, and necessary. It isn't the final verdict, it's valuable feedback guiding them toward greatness. Sarah Blakely, the self-made billionaire founder of Spanx, grew up with a father who celebrated failure. Each evening at dinner, he'd enthusiastically ask, "Sarah, what did you fail at today?" And he'd congratulate her, reframing failure as proof of bravery and progress. Blakely's mindset shifted early. She learned failure wasn't something shameful, but something brilliant. It showed she was experimenting, growing, and risking boldly. She credits this mindset as essential to her later success, openly embracing setbacks as powerful lessons guiding her forward. Colonel Harland Sanders, the founder of KFC, was rejected exactly 1,009 times when trying to sell his recipe. Think about that. He heard no over 1,000 times. Most people would quit after 5, 10, maybe 20 rejections. But Sanders understood intuitively what psychologists now confirm: grit, the passionate persistence towards your long-term goals, is far more crucial than talent or luck. Sanders didn't internalize his rejections. Instead, he brilliantly reframed them as opportunities to perfect his approach, refining his pitch again and again. On attempt 1010, he finally heard yes, and that yes became a global empire. He brilliantly failed forward, transforming rejection into reinvention. To shift your mindset, you must consciously change the story you tell yourself about failure. Psychologists call this cognitive reframing. When you fail, instead of thinking, "I'm worthless," you say, "This approach didn't work. What can I learn?" Instead of asking, "Why me?" ask, "What's the hidden lesson here?" This subtle shift transforms painful setbacks into valuable information and propels you into action. Brené Brown, a renowned researcher on vulnerability, famously says, "There is no innovation and creativity without failure, period. Vulnerability is not weakness, it's courage." To create something meaningful or authentic, you must risk rejection. If you avoid failure, you deny yourself growth. This mindset shift isn't about pretending setbacks don't hurt. It's about bravely facing the pain, extracting the lesson, and boldly applying it to your next attempt. Here's an exercise to help you start embracing failure right now. Reflect on a recent failure you experienced. Feel that discomfort and ask yourself honestly, what opportunity was hidden inside that failure? How did it guide me closer to where I want to be? Simply reframing one failure today rewires your thinking, transforming your pain into power and your setbacks into stepping stones. When you embrace failure as feedback, something extraordinary happens. You no longer fear the possibility of rejection. You welcome it. You become courageous enough to risk embarrassment because you understand that greatness never emerges from safety. Suddenly, failure is no longer an enemy you must avoid. It becomes your greatest ally on the path toward fulfilling your potential. But changing your mindset isn't enough if you stop there. How do you practically leverage your new attitude toward failure? How do you transform it into immediate, decisive action? Embracing failure brilliantly requires not just thinking differently, but actively responding differently. So when you face your next inevitable setback, the real question becomes, how do you fail forward, leveraging failure's momentum into unstoppable progress? How exactly do you turn brilliant failure into bold, fearless action? Here's a surprising fact. Studies show successful entrepreneurs fail on average nearly 4 times before achieving significant success. Think about that. The people we admire most, the visionary creators, groundbreaking inventors, and transformative leaders, aren't those who never fall. They're simply the ones who know how to get back up quickly, who turn every stumble into forward momentum. Steve Jobs didn't just succeed brilliantly, he failed brilliantly. After famously being fired from Apple, the very company he built, Jobs could have retreated in humiliation. Instead, he pivoted immediately, founding Next Computer and pouring himself into new ventures. To outsiders, this move looked risky, even reckless. But Jobs intuitively understood something crucial. Action is the antidote to fear. He embraced the discomfort, accepted the risk, and kept moving forward. Years later, the experiences he gained during those challenging next years became instrumental in Apple's triumphant comeback, ultimately leading to the creation of the iPhone and revolutionizing how we communicate. Jobs didn't just recover from failure, he brilliantly leveraged it to reshape the world. Jan Koum's story is another powerful testament. After being rejected by Facebook, he didn't linger in bitterness. Instead, he immediately channeled that disappointment into action, co-founding WhatsApp. Imagine the irony. The same company that once rejected him later purchased his creation for $19 billion. Had Koum secured the original job, he likely never would have developed WhatsApp. His willingness to fail forward, to use rejection as fuel rather than a roadblock, changed not only his life, but the entire landscape of global communication. So, how exactly can you fail forward like Jobs and Koum? Here's a practical, powerful framework you can apply immediately. First, courageously acknowledge your failure without excuses. Second, explicitly ask yourself, what precise lesson did this setback teach me? Third, and most importantly, act immediately on what you've learned. Adjust your approach, pivot decisively, and swiftly launch your next attempt. The quicker you move from reflection to decisive action, the more powerfully you leverage failure's hidden momentum. Colonel Harlan Sanders offers a vivid example of failing forward in practice. Rejected precisely 1,009 times when pitching his now famous fried chicken recipe, Sanders never allowed himself to wallow in defeat. Instead, each rejection motivated him to refine his approach, sharpen his pitch, and immediately seek another opportunity. Each no was a brilliantly disguised stepping stone, guiding him inevitably towards success. On attempt number 1010, Sanders finally heard yes, and Kentucky Fried Chicken became one of the most recognized brands worldwide. This wasn't luck. It was grit, determination, and deliberate action. Sanders brilliantly transformed constant rejection into relentless momentum. Psychologist Angela Duckworth, an expert on grit, describes this kind of relentless perseverance as the single most reliable predictor of success. In her research, talent and intelligence were secondary to grit, the passionate, persistent pursuit of long-term goals despite setbacks. Duckworth reminds us, when you get knocked down, grit is about getting back up stronger every single time. Embracing failure as part of the process not only builds resilience, but actively moves you toward your dreams. Each step forward after a setback isn't just recovery, it's acceleration. Another practical method to embrace this mindset is to actively challenge yourself to fail intentionally. This might sound strange at first, but intentionally seeking situations where you might fail, whether public speaking, applying for a dream job, or starting a new creative project, actually builds your emotional muscles. With each courageous attempt, your fear of failure diminishes, your resilience strengthens, and your forward momentum becomes unstoppable. Each attempt, successful or not, brings invaluable clarity, strength, and growth. Consider creating a personal failure resume, a list of your setbacks, rejections, and mistakes, along with lessons learned. While initially uncomfortable, seeing failures documented openly reveals an astonishing truth. Each setback propelled you forward, each mistake sharpened your skills, and each rejection clarified your true purpose. Reviewing this resume regularly reminds you that your failures aren't obstacles. They're your richest source of wisdom and growth. Ultimately, failing forward means choosing bold action over safe inaction. It means understanding deeply that your next failure might hold the precise insight or experience you need to succeed beyond your wildest dreams. Brilliant failure isn't about perfection, it's about courageously acting, despite imperfection, embracing setbacks as inevitable and essential milestones on your journey. But to fully embody the concept of failing brilliantly, to make it a living, breathing part of your identity, you must move beyond occasional action into a complete and total transformation. You must learn not just how to fail forward in isolated moments, but how to adopt failing brilliantly as your personal philosophy, your daily practice, your way of life. The real question is, what does it truly mean to fail brilliantly, and how can you start embodying this principle immediately? To fail brilliantly means something profound. It means to fully embrace the beauty of imperfection, the bravery and vulnerability, and the strength hidden within every setback. It means living your life boldly, knowing that failure is not the opposite of success. It's the pathway toward it. Imagine a world where failing brilliantly is not only accepted, but celebrated openly. Classrooms where students proudly share courageous mistakes. Businesses that highlight bold attempts even when they fall short, and communities that recognize setbacks as badges of honor rather than sources of shame. Imagine how your life would transform if every failure, large or small, was a brilliant opportunity to learn, adapt and grow. As J.K. Rowling famously said, "It is impossible to live without failing at something, unless you live so cautiously that you might as well not have lived at all, in which case you fail by default." The greatest risk isn't in failing. It's in never daring to try. The cost of comfort, of staying safely hidden within your limits, is a life unlived, dreams unfulfilled, and potential unrealized. So I challenge you right now, choose to fail brilliantly. Write down one audacious risk you've been too afraid to pursue and commit to taking action today. Reach out openly and share a failure you've kept hidden with someone you trust, breaking the silence that gives shame its power. Start your own 30-day bravery challenge, deliberately seeking situations where you might fail, building your resilience and courage day by day. Remember the heroes we've talked about. Dyson, enduring thousands of disappointments, transformed everyday life around the world. Kariko, rejected relentlessly for decades, eventually reshaped medicine and saved millions. Coombe, once humiliated by rejection, built an empire precisely because he was brave enough to fail forward. Their stories are proof, living proof, that failing brilliantly is not just idealistic rhetoric. It's the authentic pathway toward lasting greatness. As you move forward, let your new mantra become, fail brilliantly, rise boldly. Let each setback become your stepping stone, each rejection your redirection, and each disappointment your greatest teacher. Don't shrink from setbacks. Chase them courageously, knowing that behind each lies your hidden strength, your undiscovered genius, your extraordinary potential. In the words of Samuel Beckett, ever tried, ever failed. No matter, try again, fail better. These words aren't just poetry, they're your blueprint for living brilliantly. Failure isn't something you survive, it's something you actively embrace, something you harness, something you use to build an exceptional life of courage, resilience, and achievement. From this moment forward, dare to fail brilliantly. Dare to fall down, learn deeply, and stand taller. Dare to turn every setback into your stepping stone, every stumble into your strength, and every defeat into your defining moment, because failure is not an obstacle, it's your opportunity. It is not your limitation, it is your leverage. Fail brilliantly, rise boldly, and watch as your life transforms into a masterpiece greater than you ever imagined.